Hi, everybody. I'm Caren Loebel-Fried, and I'm here with my new friend, Kikuo Johnson, and we're really excited to be here, part of Hawaii Book and Music Festival. I'm reporting from Volcano, Hawaii. Kikuo, where are you?
I'm here in Brooklyn, longing to be in Hawaii. But yeah, I'm here in my studio in Brooklyn. I spend most of the year out here, but I do spend about a month in Hawaii every year. So I can't wait to get back.
So my name is Caren Loebel-Fried, and I'm an artist and an author. And as I said, I'm from Volcano. I started off doing mostly books that were based on Hawaiian culture and legends, but I was mostly interested in the relationship between humans and their environment and how people make use of their environment and how people maintain and support and conserve their natural resources. So I'm trying to advance. There we go. I got really interested in natural science and using art and stories to promote awareness of conservation. So I did this work with Conservation Council for Hawaii, and it's a Hawaiian monk seal. And it was fun because this wonderful monk seal was at the Waikiki Aquarium. He had actually been saved because he could no longer live in the wild. His name is Ho'ailona. So it was a lot of fun to hang out with him and sketch from him live. I also worked with Kilauea Point, that's on Kauai, and representing the different animals that occur there, and of course the lighthouse. So that's been really fun. They use it on merchandise and T-shirts and stuff like that. So continuing that idea of using art as a way of bringing awareness to conservation issues. This is the alala, the last alala couple that occurred in the wild, because now they're only in, they're being preserved and they're actually reproducing in a place that I know of, Keaho Bird Conservation Center. And they are on Big Island. But these were the last couple, and it was such a beautiful photograph that Jack Jeffrey took that I partnered with him and used this photo, and it was part of a bird conservation effort that was being done. And this was also a Jack Jeffrey photo. It's the Wandering Tattler, and I wanted to tell the story of them. They're incredible voyagers. They go really far to get food and to do their reproduction, but they do occur in Hawaii, and you'll see them, and they're quite wonderful. But I loved this posture because it sort of showed an Oahu at rest, almost in a yoga pose. And I love the idea of thinking the reality that each bird or each animal like us is an individual. And I really try to get that across, like get the personality or the mood of the individual species when I'm doing art. And this is the palila, and there are hardly any palila left. And they're wonderful birds, and they're on the Big Island. And there's an effort now that's being made to bring awareness to palila and how much mosquitoes are affecting the forest birds in Hawaii. So most recently, I was doing research on Oahu at Hanauma Bay because I'm going to be working with Friends of Hanauma Bay to create art for them and to celebrate the beautiful place and all the species that occur there. And so many tourists go there, but I don't know if everybody's aware of how special it is, how incredible it is. So I was hosted by a wonderful woman named Anka. Thank you, Anka. And I came home with an ear infection, but if I act a little fuzzy, just understand that that's what's going on. But anyway, I'm thrilled to be working with them. But I do a lot of research for all of my work. And something happened to me several years ago where I became aware of albatrosses, and I just became obsessed with them. I had to find a way to be with them. So I found a way to get to Midway Atoll, which is all the way at the end of the northwestern Hawaiian chain, Papahana Mokuakea. And there I was part of a team that counted all of the nests on Midway. And since there were over 500,000 nests, it was quite a big job. I was also working on art for US Fish and Wildlife Service. And this was the art that I created, and it brings out the, the human history and all the different kinds, or many of the different kinds of wildlife that occur there, and also the both the American history there and also the Hawaiian history. And I really wanted to show how we're working now. We changed it so much and made it so difficult for the wildlife there. But now there's real efforts to restore the environment. And that connection between environment and wildlife is really important to me to bring out in my work. So what followed from that was the book, A Perfect Day for an Albatross, that tells the story of this wonderful albatross named Maui, which means calm, and how albatrosses reach down and grab squid from the water. And they have a wonderful dance, and it's very meaningful and important to them because they actually choose their life mate by dancing. Not that different than some of us. I got interested in the idea of conservation and extinction. So this is the Hawai'i o'o, and this is an extinct bird, such a beautiful bird. After I did this art, I was working with Marjorie Ziegler, and we created this book, Manu, the Boy Who Loved Birds. And I'm going to be talking about that in the next section. But right now, I just want to say there are many ways to tell graphic stories, and I'm really excited about Kikuo sharing with us.
And this is actually where all my life I'd love to draw. I grew up reading comic books at a young age, and by the time I was in high school, I kind of wanted to branch out, get into other kinds of art. And growing up on Maui in Makawao, like the art that I didn't go to museums, I didn't have anything around. I had comic books, and I had the kind of landscape painting scene that, especially during the 90s, got huge, and amazing painters out there. Shout out to Eddie Float, one of my favorite painters to this day, amazing watercolor artist, and the whole landscape scene up there. And so by the time I was in college and high school, I had my box easel, and I'd go out into the pineapple fields. Picking pineapple was my first job in life. And at the time I was watching kind of the, agricultural industry on Maui disappear. And I thought I would kind of paint this rustic, here's another kind of one of my paintings, just kind of showing the dilapidated pineapple equipment out there, not knowing that you can't even see this. There's very few places to see this stuff anymore on Maui at this point, but this would have been 2002-ish. And I did that for a while in college, and I finally realized my junior year in college, it's you know what I really want to do, the reason I started drawing and my passion with drawing always was to tell stories and use my imagination. As much as I enjoyed going out into the fields, I wanted to write comic books, and I returned to that. And while I was in college, I started this book, which is called Night Fisher, and it's a semi-autobiographical story about a coming-of-age story about boys in high school on Maui. The action in the book takes place maybe around the turn of the century, and from the 90s to the 2000s. And I remember when I was writing this book, I really wanted to, I felt like the Maui that I knew and that I grew up in was never represented on TV or in books in the way that I was familiar with. So that was kind of I felt a sense of purpose on working on it. So I worked on it for 3 years, and just, pre-social media days, nobody saw it. And I finally sent it to my favorite comic book publisher, and they liked it, and they published it, and it got some good reviews, and it got translated into a few different languages, got to travel the world a little bit. And unexpectedly, it also got me a career in illustration, which was not something I was necessarily chasing directly, but what happened was a lot of magazines that would see the book or hear reviews of the book would call me, and they'd be like, do you want to do this illustration for us? My first professional job ever was drawing a set of sex positions for Men's Health magazine. I won't bore you with that, but or maybe I should have bored you with that. Maybe that's more interesting. My second ever illustration was for the New Yorker. This is like a car chase scene from like a 2006 issue of the New Yorker. It was a double page spread. It just went across the top of a spread. And as I'm sure a lot of illustrators know, like the best promotion as an illustrator is a good job. And so this was in a major magazine, and I just got really lucky right out, and have been working with the New Yorker ever since. But over time, doing editorial illustration, kind of that mercenary freelance life, my passion came back to me, and I wanted to get back to writing stories and doing comics. And so in 2012, I think we released this book, The Shark King. And it is a kind of retelling of the classic Nanaue story, you know, also known as like the Shark Man of Waipio, classic Hawaiian story. And we did it in comics form. The editor of this is a woman named Françoise Mouly, who is also an art editor at the New Yorker. And her idea is that kids should have books that they can, or there's so many great kids books out there. One type of kids book that she had an idea for is books that kids can read to themselves instead of having books that parents read to kids. And that's a great way to learn to read, because she learned to read through comics. I know I learned to read through comics, and her husband, Art Spiegelman, also learned to read through comics. So that was kind of like the thing. So here's some pages from The Shark King. After working with Françoise on this, she controls the covers at the New Yorker, and I was hoping at some point I might be able to do a cover for her. Submitted sketches for 4 years, and finally ended up getting my work on the cover of the New Yorker. This is not the first one. This one was from 2008, but it's a really kind of another way to explore telling pictures with stories, which was always been my passion. And here you see, I'll zoom in here. This was in 2018, and I just remember every time I would leave the city. I remember once I went hiking upstate New York and I saw Confederate flags, and it was just wild to see that in New York City. And so this culture clash of urban versus rural and rural versus urban just seemed like something that I wanted to try to capture. And believe it or not, I have seen trucks very similar to this out in the wild. Also, though, just on a side note, when I was drawing this, I was actually, there's probably places that look like this in upstate, but I was actually thinking about the view of Haleakala for those people in Maui right now from like La Perouse. Obviously not the pine trees, but like when you're looking up and the way that the clouds sit right there. Anyway, side note. So in addition to the New Yorker covers, this year I finally sat down and I wrote my third graphic novel, No One Else. I think it's the best thing I've ever done. I'm really excited about it. Again, it takes place in Hawaii. You know, if I'm gonna sit for 2 years and draw something and imagine myself in a place, no place I'd rather be than Maui. So this gives you a little flavor of what's inside the book. For those again familiar with Maui, that's the Ho'okipa Lookout. Yeah, and this is coming out in November. And I'm just thrilled to be talking about it. And and I will be home in December 10th at Boss Bookstore signing these. But aside from all that, like, I'm excited to talk about the nitty gritty of how we make these things and everything else with you, Caren. Oh, let me end the screen share here. Stop share.
Oh, that was great. That was so interesting. I didn't know that. I mean, I kind of grew up on comics too. And Art Spiegelman of Mouse fame.
Yeah. So Art Spiegelman, you know, probably most people are familiar with the book, but it was kind of the first graphic novel, helped in 1986 transition comics, which at that time were still so looked down upon and kind of just not accepted as an art form. And his book in 86 transitioned it, and Françoise actually published the book and serialized it, and they're also married, and also she's my editor at the New Yorker. So
that's great. Amazing. Yeah, I mean, that Mouse, it's about the Holocaust, in case anybody isn't familiar with it. I mean, it's a very serious story, and it features mice that sort of are the are the humans. They're the characters telling the story, and it's incredible. It's such a powerful story, and here it was, and graphically told. And I actually lived in New York City at the time when it came out, and
Oh,
was in a
amazing.
band, and we so we sort of have switched places, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's really cool. That's a cool connection. Thank you for that introduction. It was really wonderful to see your early work and how you transition, and how quickly I mean, you really have risen to the occasion of having this beautiful platform to use your imagination, because you have a wonderful imagination, and I've been blown away in your work by how much you tell a story just in the subtleties within each frame. It's very cool. We're going to talk about that more, because I have questions for you about how you do that. It's really wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. Now I'm going to go back to my screen share and see if I can go to the right. Well, there we go. Here's the money cover. Hope this is right. Let's give this a try. So I hope everybody sees the Manu book cover. So this is my latest book. It's with University of Hawaii Press. And excuse me. This storybook is actually based on a real story, a real boy. His dad was on the board of Conservation Council for Hawaii, and Marjorie Ziegler's real passion, her vision from the first day that I met her. She was the Conservation Council for Hawaii's director. She wanted people to realize that dinosaurs aren't the only things that went extinct. We have extinction all around us. And this dad named his boy after the extinct o'o bird, because he really hoped that his son would grow up and understand the relationship between animals and plants, and that when things go extinct, it really is forever. And I worked on this poster with Conservation Council for Hawaii after that, and it was showing this boy, Manu, and he has this connection with the o'o bird. So that was a lot of fun, but I knew that I needed to do more with this story. It was so compelling. So I began to research and create a story around this little nugget. And I started to do research. So at Bishop Museum, I was in the vertebrate zoology section. I went a bunch of times and hung out with the beautiful o'o bird skins. It's pretty powerful to be in a place and to be with the remains of this extinct bird. And I know a bunch of people that were part of the last surveys on Kauai were the remaining o'o species. There were 4 species of o'o. The remaining o'o, the only one left. They actually used recorded song and lured the one last bird to come. And I also, at the museum, researched the cultural aspects of it. So visiting the actual proper museum, and if you go to Oahu, you can go to Bishop Museum and you can see this beautiful feather work there. So Manu he grew up in the city, he's from Honolulu, and he loves birds. His name, Manu, means bird.
I do want to share this this watercolor, totally unrelated from a professional work, but this is a watercolor I did as a gift from my family, and this is the kolea that like nests, or I guess not nests, but like lives in our yard every winter. Comes from Alaska, and so just love.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Anyway,
thank you for sharing that. I love it.
we both have the passion for the native birds. So my new book, No One Else, it was a passion project. It was something that it was the book that I wanted to read. You know, I love comic books. I love reading comics. So much of comics, just like so much of movies these days, is franchises or genre material, sci-fi, fantasy. And the kind of books that I like and the kind of stories that I like are probably would be best understood as like art house film or indie film with just human stories about adults with adult problems and facing problems in life. There's no fantasy or anything like that. It's not for kids. It is intended for adults. And it was a script I started writing here in when I was actually briefly living in Cape Cod, and I imagined a whole story about a grieving family. And I noticed just in my own life and as my grandparents passed away and in my friends' lives, I've noticed how those family deaths can in big and in very small ways, like just change every single other dynamic in a family gets shifted in very big ways and very small ways. And I saw that as a kind of jumping off point for my story. And also I thought it had a lot of opportunity for something that would feel meaningful to me working on it for 2 years in isolation. But also a good opportunity for humor. I thought like there also could be some kind of, dry, dark humor kind of in that milieu. So I started writing it, and when I first was writing the script, I was living in Cape Cod, and I kind of imagined it happening in Cape Cod. And it wasn't until I was home in Hawaii and sitting, this would have been like 2015. I was sitting in Wailuku, looking out over the valley and looking at the giant plume of smoke hovering over Maui and thinking, this is crazy. Like I grew up with these like sugarcane burns, and we used to call it Hawaiian snow growing up, and we'd get out to our car. People from Maui all remember this. You go out to your car, it's just covered in ash. And I remember being a kid on the playground and having like the ash rain down on us. And it was fun. It was weirdly fun when you're a kid. But as an adult looking out at this giant burn and this like mushroom cloud, it seemed insane. And I was like, this has got to stop at some point. Like, this is crazy. And sure enough, the next year was the last year that the burns were happening on Maui. And so I wish I had brought a slide of, sorry, so the idea of so this is a page from No One Else. And kind of, it's a dream, another dream, a lot like Caren's book, as she mentioned, great opportunity in an illustrated book to go into dreams and have a surreal scene. But this is a dream of a grandfather who, I don't think it's a spoiler to say, dies in the story. And this is his grandson's dream of him looking in the sugarcane fields. And it was really sitting on that hill, looking at the burn, and I started saying, what if this story all takes place on Maui? What if it all takes place like right here, right at the view I'm looking at? And that's when everything became real to me. I've heard like all the characters became real. I could see it all unfold. I know, like I could stage it all, with comics, because you have to draw every single scene. It helps to use a landscape that super well, so you can kind of do the staging from memory. And yeah, and also just this feeling, especially the next year when sugarcane ended. It's not like I ever had like a super strong affection for sugarcane. I know the way it destroyed the watershed on the east side of Maui and all those controversies as well. So it's not like I had this huge affection for sugarcane. And yet I grew up my entire life. Anytime you fly into the islands, it's this blanket of bright green, and that Pioneer Mill just being kind of the hearth, for better or worse, on the middle of the island. And I felt a deep sadness for this thing that I didn't really love. And that all is that's kind of the central theme of the book, like mourning something that you never liked that much. And playing that for humor, but also I played it very straight. I think some people might not find the book funny at all, because I did at first it was a little jokier, and then I was like, no, play it straight. I played it so straight I might have played the humor out of it. But that's the book in a nutshell. And there's 3 main characters. Here's the young grandson, and here's the grandson with his I showed this slide already, but here's the grandson with his uncle, having some shave ice, and then the mother, Charlene, who I guess I only have this scene of the back of her head here, not a great scene of her, but those are the three main characters, and it follows their story as they grieve the patriarch of the family, and it's a short little book. It's a novella, yeah, I think that's all for now, and I think we're gonna, yeah, I'll hand it back to Caren. Let me end this screen share, and that's kind of the origin of that.
There's so much more to talk about in this book. And is that okay if I say
Sure.
to you?
Yeah,
I wrote to you, I think last night. I read it a few months ago, and then I reread it last night. It's an unbelievable story. And I laughed and I cried. I told you I laughed and I cried because I did. It's so well done, and it's just such an interesting story. And that's not even like how you succeed in telling it. Because to me, it's like it's one thing if you have a gift or a talent, and I know you work really hard to get ideas across. I mean, I assume you do. I hope you do.
Definitely. Ask my girlfriend. She'll tell you. She tells you I work too hard. True,
yeah, right? Yeah. But I think having a great story, I mean, there has to be some really good, solid content, and it's not fluff. I mean, this is like incredible, because to me, I felt so much for the mom in the story. And I mean, she is working so hard, and oh my goodness, it's insane. And it's so much stress, and she's taking care of her dad, the grandfather. But let me tell you something. When I saw, I'm a mom myself. When I saw that blanket, since we already know, I don't want to give anything away. The first read, I was like, oh no, this is not going to end well. But I also appreciate, I mean, the story goes through so many different, goes to so many different places and through so many emotions, and the characters are so solid. I mean, they're real living people to me, and these situations are so, they're so real. I mean, they're so relatable, and but it has a happy ending, and I so appreciate that. Because it's tough. It's a tough story. So well done. And this young boy, I mean, it's so cool when you have youngsters that sort of are the vehicle for stories.
Yeah,
I love that.
Oh, thank you so much, Caren. That yeah, not that many people have read the book yet. It's not out till November. And no. That's not what I don't think you did any spoilers or anything, but I only say that because I just appreciate that close reading so much. I really sincerely, that means so much to me to get your feedback, and hear that hopefully a lot of things are coming through. So thank you so much.